Okay, guys, so to start with for the review, I wanted you to kind of go through all your notes that you have because there was a lot of facts that we wrote down and new vocabulary and whatnot that we have for this unit. So I'm going to pause the Edpuzzle, and I just want you to kind of look through your stuff and gather these notes together. You want to have where you wrote down your classifications, your definitions for those, your facts about angles, and then also our cheat sheets for the proofs. We made a list of all the postulates and their definitions, and then we had a proof cheat sheet where we talked about using reflexive, definition of a vocab word like bisect or something like that, vertical angles. You want to find that stuff. So pause the video real quick, click continue when you're ready to go on once you have your notes kind of organized. Okay, so here's some basic things that, again, we just want to talk through and make sure that you have written down somewhere. Again, guys, while you're at home right now, I'm allowing you to use your notes. If we were in person, you wouldn't be able to use your notes for these tests, but take advantage of this right now. If your notes are organized, this is going to be a lot of an easier test for you. So again, you want to have those classifications. You also want to have written down somewhere in your notes that all three angles and every triangle add to what amount of degrees? 180. Every single triangle, all three angles add up to be 180. Now you also want to have this written down, and you might need to add this into your notes somewhere, that in an isosceles triangle, we also know something else about the angle. If you recall, an isosceles triangle has how many sides congruent? 2. Now, if we have 2 sides congruent, we actually also have 2 angles congruent. In an isosceles triangle, we call these the base angles. It's like the feet. If these are my congruent sides down here, yeah, those angles right down there are going to be congruent as well, and we're going to talk about that in some of the examples. So if you don't have this written down somewhere, you're going to have questions on your test that involve that information. Make sure you have that written down. And then again, you also want to have these cheat sheets, all your postulates, the proof cheat sheet. Organize all your stuff together, have it in one place, ready to go for the test. But let's go ahead, let's go through some examples. I'm just going to refresh your memory, and then you guys will do a quizzes to practice it on your own. So we want to classify the triangle by sides and by angles. So I've got 60 degrees, 50 degrees, 70 degrees. Let's go by sides first. So you've got your cheat sheet. Now notice that I don't have any markings here. Now we can't assume. Yes, it looks like these sides look the same, but we can't assume. None of these sides are marked congruent. So what do we know? What's the classification for that then? This is scalene. A scalene triangle has no sides marked congruent. We can't assume if it looks like it's congruent. No, have to have the markings. And then what about the angles? Let's look at the angles. We've got 60, 50, and 70. So how would we classify this by its angles? Acute. All of those angles are less than 90. Less than 90 degrees. That's an acute triangle. Looking at this one now, same thing. Let's go by sides. We've got 3 sides classifications. And look, I do have some markings here. So how would I classify this triangle by its sides? This is an isosceles triangle because it's got 2 sides marked congruent, and we can see even just based off the numbers, even if I didn't have these sides marked here, 5 and 5 tells me I've got 2 sides that are the same. So we're good there. And now by its angles, there's something special here that immediately tells us how we would classify this one by its angles. This is going to be a right triangle. Guaranteed to be a right triangle if it's got that little box, if it's got a right angle. Going on, we're just going to fly through these. So we're going to now use the fact that all 3 angles in a triangle add to 180 degrees, and we're going to use that fact to find the missing angle. So we want to find angle I here. So that's this one right here. Now I know what these 2 are, and I know that all 3 need to add up to 180. So we can set this up as an equation. All 3 angles add to 180. Write that as an equation. 95 degrees plus 25 degrees plus angle I. All 3 angles add to equal 180. Again, guys, I know a lot of you have a hard time transitioning from a sentence to an equation. All 3 angles add to 180. That's the corresponding equation. And then we're going to simplify this. So we got 95 plus 25. Let's go ahead and add these two. What is that? 120. I'm going to double check because I'm not confident in my math right now. 95 plus 25. I was correct. 120. Plus angle I equals 180. Now that I'm moving the 120 degrees over, now we're doing the opposite. So angle I should equal 60 degrees. Again, if we're on the same side of the equal sign, we combine. If we're moving across an equal sign, we got to do the opposite. Okay, let's try B now. So this one, we want to find angle A. Now, I don't have any angles to go off of. At least I don't have any numbers to go off of. What I do have to go off of is the fact that all three sides are marked congruent. Guaranteed, if all three sides are marked congruent, the angles are also guaranteed to be congruent. So think about this. If all three need to add up to 180, and they all have to be the same, what do you think they each need to be? Go ahead and try it for a second. Well, all three need to add to 180, and they're all going to be the same. So if I divide 180 by 3, that's the measure of each angle. 60 plus 60 plus 60, they're all the same. That adds up to 180. In an equilateral triangle, guys, this is an equilateral equiangular triangle. Every single time the angles will be 60 degrees, guaranteed. Equilateral, equiangular, those go together, guaranteed, and guaranteed all the angles will be 60 degrees. Okay, let's try this last one now. Find angle D. So here's angle D. So this is what I was just talking about on the last slide. This is what type of triangle by its sides? Isosceles. And isosceles triangles have two sides congruent, guaranteed to have two angles congruent as well. And here's the angles that will be congruent. It's going to be the feet. We call them the base angles. So if here's my congruent sides, these are congruent angles. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that actually and mark them congruent. In an isosceles triangle, guaranteed. Whatever sides you have marked congruent, the base angles, the feet of that triangle are going to be congruent as well. So if this is 75 here, this is also 75 degrees. Please make sure you have that written in your notes. You're going to have questions like that on the test. So from here, now I know two angles. I can find the third in the exact same way we did A. So I want you to try writing an equation. We have this angle plus D is going to equal 180. Try to write the equation. Okay, I have all my three angles, 75 plus angle D equals 180. Numbers on the same side of the equal sign get added together, which is 150. Oops, I'm sorry, plus angle D. And now that I'm moving across an equal sign, I'm going to subtract. So angle D equals 30. Again, super important fact, guys, an isosceles triangle, base angles will also be the same. Okay, now we're going to take this a little bit further. Now we have to solve equations, right? Some of these questions will be just basic numbers. Some you will have to solve an equation, but nothing changes. We know that I have 1, 2, 3 angles here, and they add to 180. Take a second and try to write your equation. All three of those angles, put a plus sign in between them, set it equal to 180. Okay, so I have 3x plus 1 is my first angle, plus my second angle is 4x minus 10, plus 33. Here's my three angles. I'm adding them together and setting them equal to 180. It doesn't matter if you put them in a different order because from here, we're going to combine like terms. Take a second and try to solve your equation and see if you can solve for x. Okay, let's check. So combining like terms here, I have a 3x and a 4x, that gives me 7x. And then I have a positive 1, a negative 10, and a positive 33. So I'm going to use my calculator for that because I'm not sure. A positive 1 minus 10, oops, let me write that in carefully, and a plus 33. we should get plus 24 here. That's combining like terms. Now we're going to get the x by itself. 7x equals 180 divided by 24. Is that right? Ooh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, not divided. Minus 24. I was like, what in the world? That doesn't look right. Let me erase that. See, even teachers make mistakes. 156. This is not going to come out evenly, it looks like. I'm going to divide by 7. 156 divided by 7. So we're going to get 22.3. If you want to leave it as a decimal like that, you can. So again, if we know all three angles, we can add them together, set it equal to 180. Okay, we are on example 4. So we need to review congruency statements. Guys, it is so important that you understand these are written a specific way for a reason. Remember that looking at a congruency statement, I can tell, even without seeing a picture, what all the congruent parts are of the triangle. So I'm not even going to draw a picture. I'm going to just base it off of this. So let's write all the angles. Here's how we know which angles are congruent. It goes in order. Angle A is going to be congruent to angle D because they are the first ones listed. It goes in order. I'm going to use some different colors here. Angle B is going to be congruent to angle E because they're the second ones listed. And angle C is congruent to angle F because they're the last ones listed. So the angles are super easy. Now let's look at the sides. So I can also tell which sides are going to be congruent, but we have to be careful about the last one. So sides are two letters put together, right? So here's my first side, AB congruent to DE. The first two letters side is congruent to the second two letter side. So AB is congruent to DE. Now from there, I have my next two letters. I have BC is going to be congruent to what in the other triangle? EF. BC is the last two letters. EF is the last two letters. That's how we can tell what's congruent. Now, this is only two sides though. Triangles have three sides. So here's my last side. Our last side is from combining the first letter and the last letter. So looking in my second triangle, what is AC going to be congruent to? DF, first and last letter. So immediately looking at a congruency statement, I can identify the angles that are going to be congruent and the sides that are going to be congruent. I want you to try this next one entirely on your own. Write all three pairs of congruent angles and then all three pairs of congruent sides in the exact same way. Go ahead and try it. Okay, let's go through it. So we should have angle J congruent to angle F. Oop. First letter. We should have angle K congruent to angle A. Second letter. And we should have angle L congruent to angle M. Last letter. Now for my sides, again, we got to be careful. We should have, and it's okay if you have the letters flipped on any of these. Like I could call JK KJ, and that's fine. JK, though, is congruent to the first two letters over here, FA. KL to AM. Again, it's okay if you flip the letters. And then JL is the last one, congruent to FM. This is important, and you're going to see why in the next question. We have to know what pieces are congruent in order to solve these problems properly and know what to set equal to each other. So let's try. We got just two more slides here we're going to get to. Okay, so you're going to have a question like this where you are given a congruency statement and a picture, and then we have a bunch of things marked here. Remember that our congruency statement tells us what pieces are equal. So here's what I'm going to do, and this is what you want to do in your test. I'm going to take my triangles and label everything I've been told first, and then I'm going to go from there and see what I need to solve for. Our end goal here is to solve for x, but we'll get there. Let's go ahead and label everything. Actually, I want you guys to try that. Read everything here. I want you to try labeling everything on this picture. Go ahead and give it a shot and we'll check. Okay, so angle W is 33 degrees. That should have gone here. WA is this side. That's 5x plus 2. Then I have angle P over here is an equation, 8y plus 10. Notice that I'm labeling angles on the insides and sides on the outside. I have PU, which is 7x minus 8. That's this side here. And then I have LP. Where's LP? There's LP. Okay, now I want to solve for x, it says. So here's what we need to do. We need to look at our, to start off with, excuse me, we need to find where x is in our picture. Now x is in two spots. We have an x here and we have an x here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this because we might use one, we might use both. Let's see. You need to identify the side where the variable is on, the side of the angle. X over here is WA. Once you have identified that, you need to go up to your congruency statement. Notice WA is going to be congruent to which side in the other triangle based off of, again, WA is the first two letters. PU, that's good because they both have X's. So because they are congruent, congruent means equal, I will set them equal to each other. Try that. These two sides are equal. Write your equation, put an equal sign between them. Okay, guys, hopefully we're getting used to this phrasing. Here's my two sides that are equal. I put an equal sign between them. I don't know how much clearer to make that, guys. If two things are equal, put an equal sign between them. That's what you gotta do. And then we'll solve this. Go ahead and take a moment to solve. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and subtract the 5x over. You didn't have to do that. You could have done something different. This is 2x minus 8, and I need to add the 8 over. I'm gonna bump over here. This gives me 10, right? So I got 10 equals 2x. We divide by 2. We get x equals 5. So there's our answer for the first. And they just wanted to solve for x, so we're done. I'm going to go ahead and erase some of this, though, to get it out of the way for the next one. Okay, now I want you guys to try solving for y. So here's the steps you need to take. Find the piece of the triangle where y is at. Look up to the congruency statement and see from the other triangle what that piece is congruent to. And then set them equal and solve. Go ahead and give it a shot all the way through. Okay, so here's y. Y is angle P. I bounce up to my congruency statement. You should have said, okay, well, angle P is congruent to angle W, and there's angle W. Congruent means we set them equal to each other. There's your equation. So again, find the variable they're asking for. Figure out what part of the triangle it is, if it's an angle, if it's a side, which one is it? Look to your congruency statement, figure out what it's congruent to, and then set them equal. So solving this is not going to work out evenly again, but that's okay. 8y equals 23, divide by 8. Let's see what we get here. We're going to get some decimal. 23 divided by 8. It's 2.875, but that's okay. Okay, you might need some extra practice with those ones, but again, the key to these questions is this thing right here. You cannot ignore that. That literally tells you what you need to, which pieces are going to be set equal to each other. Okay, we have one last thing to practice here because a lot of you guys have said you're struggling with identifying the postulate. So here's what I want you to do. If this were a proof, these three things would be statements in the proof. I want you to mark them on the picture and then based on that, identify the postulate. So take a moment, copy this picture for A, and then mark these parts congruent, and then we're going to identify the postulate. Okay, so let's see, following with our fingers, we got C to A to B is this angle. E to A to F is this angle, right? That's right in the middle there. So those are marked congruent. We also have angle, check. We also have angle F. I'm going to mark this with 2. That's a different set of congruent angles to see. And then we have CB, which is right here, congruent to EF. So remember, once you have marked with your hand, cover up one of the triangles. We pick our postulate based on looking at one triangle. I'm going to scribble out the top one. You can just cover up the top one with your hand. So here's the trick, guys, again, to figure out if it's going to be side, 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 side angle, whatever. Put an A and an S by each marking. A's you're putting by angle markings, S you're putting by side markings. So this right here is an angle marking. This right here is an angle marking. This right here is a side marking. Hopefully you can tell. Follow around the outside of the triangle. Follow around the outside of the triangle this way. Da, da. What postulate is this? Angle, angle, side. A to S. Now here's why it is not angle, side, angle. Again, we read outside the triangle. We do not do this. We don't go through the triangle, right? I don't go A through the triangle to S and then over to this A. No, you read outside the triangle. Angle, angle, side, not angle, cut through the triangle. Side angle. Hopefully this is making sense. Try it again. Copy the picture, put those markings on, and determine the postulate. Okay, let's see. We got UT congruent to TS. Here's U to T. Here's T to S. Sorry. And we have RT congruent to RT. Remember, if something is congruent to yourself, hopefully you remember that's reflexive property, but that's how we mark it. Now here's the thing. We want to check for something here. We see right angles. It's not always this case though. We want to check for hypotenuse leg. Is the hypotenuse marked in this picture? Nope. This is the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the side that does not touch the right angle. This side does not touch the right angle, and that's the hypotenuse. Therefore, if the hypotenuse is not marked, like these are marked, this can't be hypotenuse leg. So let's go from here. I'm going to scribble out one of my triangles. You can cover it with your hand on your paper. Careful not to cover up this marking. Remember that this marking applies in both triangles, so I don't want to cover that up. So from here, you are going to put an S or an A by each marking and see what the postulate is. Go ahead and try it. So I have, this is a side marking. I'm putting an S. This is an angle marking. I'm putting an A. This is a side marking. I'm putting an S. Go around the outside of the triangle. This is the outside of the triangle. Which postulate is this? Side angle side. Hopefully this is making more sense. Last one, we are here. I know this is kind of a long video. So last one, same thing. Read, put the markings on, try it. Okay, let's check. You guys should have this down by now. It's super easy. QX to CZ. Here's QX. Here's CZ. We got QM to CY. QM I'm putting with 2 markings because this is a different set of congruent sides to CY. And then the last one, XM to ZY. So I'm going to put an S or an A by each marking that I put, and then I'm going to identify the postulate. Try both. Okay. Side, side, side. I don't need to look at this triangle. Pretty obvious, guys. I have no angles marked. Remember, to have an angle marked, I need to have drawn it. Or it needed to be given, like in this case in the picture. I don't have any of the angles marked. This is side, side, side. Okay, so from here, you are going to try some problems all on your own on the quizzes, and hopefully we can, this is enough of a refresher that we can feel confident looking at that review.